It's the Friday Cocktail, presented by Anna Glowinsky.
So the question is, why do millions of people around the globe love Scottish dancing? Folk music that goes back a long way in history and still captures the tapping feet of people today. I'm joined by author and dancer Cindy Gray, and she's here to talk to us about her book, Heel for Heel, which is celebrating Highland dancing, Scottish country dancing, ceilidhs and step dance. Hi, Cindy. How are you doing?
Hello there. Also reeling, which is a tad different from Scottish country dancing.
Well, let's just start with that then. What is the exact difference between all these different types of dancing, these genres of, would you call it Scottish music or Scottish folk music?
Scottish dance. I think Scottish dancing covers all of them, but it all started with Highland dancing, like the sword dance and the Highland fling, which warriors did back in the 11th century. And there was a king called Malcolm III, and in 1054 he was in a battle and he beat the rival chieftain. He was so pleased about it, he took the sword from this rival chieftain, crossed it with his own, and danced, sort of skipped around the two blades. And that was the start of Highland dancing, which people do to this day. And then Scottish country dancing is all sorts of dances done in circles or in long rows, and they can be fast or slow. Fast reels, fast jigs, slow strathspeys. And reels are those same dances, but the 10 most popular ones. Ones you might have heard of, Anna, like Dashing White Sergeant and Hamilton House or Reel of the 51st Division. Yeah. And those are very popular dances. And the reelers tend to be much more energetic. And they go wheel when they spin, and they do lots of spinning and burling, and they clap more as well than the Scottish country dancers. And then the step dance is it's a percussive dance, a bit like clog dancing or tap dancing. And you use the soles of your feet to tap out the rhythm and to the accompaniment of a fiddle or a keyboard. The interesting thing about step dance is that it used to be common throughout Scotland and then disappeared. But when a lot of people from Scotland emigrated to Canada and Australia, and particularly Canada and North America, they took step dance with them. And in the 1990s, they brought it back to Scotland. And they said, where's step dance? And it had disappeared there, but they brought it back in.
Wow.
And then finally, ceilidhs. Ceilidhs are the really simple dances like the Gay Gordons and Circassian Circle. And I don't know if anyone in Spain does any of these dances, but the ceilidhs are the simplest one.
I'm sure they absolutely do. I've not been to one in Spain, but I've been to a few weddings with a ceilidh, and they are just so much fun. They really, really are. So do all of these genres of Scottish dancing come from that one story you told us about the king in the 11th century? Have they all just evolved in their own way?
They have evolved from that Highland dancing. Yes, it does come from there, but there were different influences. For instance, travelling minstrels and gypsies in Europe brought some of the dances across from Europe to Scotland. So Scottish country dancing is quite influenced by French and German dance formations. And Mary, Queen of Scots, for example, she lived for a while in France, and she brought us the step called the pas de bas, which is used the whole time in Scottish dancing. She brought that to Scotland. So there was influences from other countries that helped the other genres of dancing evolve. Dance is different from Highland dancing.
Yeah, wow, that's really one hell of a story. And how much of the different dances have different messages or different feelings? Because that very first story you told there, it summed up quite a bit of a contrast, I would say, in feelings of expression. Bloody battle, violence, warriors normally want to look kind of tough, intimidating, and that sort of thing. But then followed up with this almost boyish-like, childlike glee. So that is quite a mixed feeling. What about then with some of the other genres? Are they expressing different things?
Yes. I mean, I think the Highland dancers, and that tends to be on the whole young people and mainly young women, they, like the warriors before them, way back centuries ago, that sort of dancing really it requires a lot of agility and precision. And it was meant to build up the precision and the skills of the warriors. And people who do Highland dancing tend to be competitive and they sort of compete against each other in big competitions, and it's very precise, and they have to have the strength of gymnasts and the grace of ballerinas. But the other sorts of dancing, all the others, the Scottish country dancing, the reeling, the ceilidhs, the step dance, are sociable. And I think the kind of impetus for them is people just like being able to get with each other, get to touch each other, hold hands, go round in a circle. It's very sociable and very jolly and really, really joyful. I mean, I've got in my book hundreds of photographs of people dancing, and I've noticed that they're all smiling. You can't do Scottish dancing without enjoying it and smiling.
That is very, very true. What's your connection? Why did you decide to write this book? Had you been Scottish dancing for a long, long time, or?
Yeah, I had in a way. And I'm not Scottish, and neither were my parents. But my mother liked Scottish dancing, and when I was 7, she taught me the Highland Fling, which is one of those ancient dances. And this was for a demonstration in Jakarta in Indonesia. We were living in Jakarta at the time because my father was a diplomat. And I went to this huge stadium where all the embassies were doing cultural shows from their different embassies. And a little girl and we did the Highland Fling. But after that, when I went to school, I learnt Scottish country dances and reels, and I kept them going. And so I have been doing it for a while. But I guess the reason I wanted to write about the book is also because it's a very, very jolly activity, as I explained. It's really sort of convivial. But there had been books written in the past about the history of Scottish country dancing, and also manuals explaining its precise dances, instructions for each and every dance. But there'd never been a book homing in on the people who do it. So what I wanted to do with my book was to interview lots and lots of people who dance and ask them, what for you is the appeal of Scottish dancing? Why do you do it? And I also talk to people in affiliated spheres like bagpipers and people who make kilts, and, talk to them about why they do what they do and how they do it. So it's very people-focused, my book. And the one other reason I suppose I got round to writing it is because, like you, I used to work in radio. I was a radio reporter for BBC Radio 4 and the World Service for years and years. So I was used to interviewing people. So it's a natural progression to carry on interviewing people, but this time, fellow enthusiasts of Scottish dancing.
Well, you've just told us a little bit about your story, and we do love a people-focused case study. Out of some of those people that you interviewed for your book, what was there any particular story that really surprised you or stood out, one that you'd like to share with the listeners today? I interviewed a lot of people who told stories which were sometimes very touching and sort of moving, and some which are very amusing. There was one guy, a man called Roddy Martin, who is Scottish, and he ages ago wrote a book called The Swinging Sporran, which is precisely the sort of book I was referring to. It's an instruction book. It's an explanation of how to do the 10 most popular reels. So he was really quite an expert, but he went to this big dance up in a big ball up in Scotland, and he was doing a dance called The Machine Without Horses. And there was this red-faced Major General covered in braid who saw him dancing and got really cross with him and said, look, you stupid man, you've cast off wrong at the top. You should get a book called The Swinging Sporran and damn well learn how to dance. He was saying that to the very author of the book. Oh, amazing.
There are a lot of funny people in the book.
And, I mean, obviously, there's so much joy in the dancing that you're talking about. It sounds like there's a lot of joy also written, or in the book, in the way that you've written it. What do you think the future is for Scottish dancing? Is it as strong as it ever was? Is it going to be declining in a digital age, or is it more important than ever?
I think it's more important than ever, because of everybody being sort of stuck with their computers and gadgets, because it's one thing which is actually interactive and physical and, sociable. I think it's really, there's a role for it. At the moment, there are a lot of young people who are really keen on reeling, so that's going strong. Scottish country dancing, it's more of a struggle. That tends to be an older cohort doing it. But I was just thinking about people in Spain who might be amongst your audience. And if there are sort of older expatriates living out in Spain, it is a fantastic activity if they can get it going anywhere in any sort of hall or whatever, because it's so good for your fitness. And there was a study done at the University of Strathclyde in 2010, and they took about 80 elderly people, all of whom were physically fit. All these people either went bicycling or went to the gym or went swimming or walked their dogs. They were all fit. But half of them also did Scottish dancing. And that half of those people were all more flexible. They walked faster. They were just physically stronger than the non-dancers. So I think, that it's a good thing for people to be doing.
I guess it's got everything in it, doesn't it?
From too. Yeah, it has. And also it keeps your brain ticking over because you're having to think of the next steps. You've got to kind of think about the patterns of the dance and what you're meant to do next. So it keeps you mentally alert as well.
Yeah, good point. So you've got the social contact, you've got keeping mentally alert, you've got impact, which is really important as people start getting older, cardio, all of it, literally all of it, agility. Yeah. I'm going to do a shout out now. If anybody listening to this does know of any Scottish dancing halls or classes or anything like that in Spain, please do get in touch right now and we can do a shout out. WhatsApp +34 645 99 67 95, or you can email studio@tre.radio. We'd love to hear from you. And if you'd like to find out more about all the stories in this book about Scottish dancing, not just a dry history of it, as Cindy has been saying, but, real personal feeling book, an emotive book, well, you can get your hands on it. It's called Heel for Heel, and you can get it from www.luath.co.uk, and Luath is spelled Luath. Is that pronounced right?
Luath, yes. Do you want me just to explain briefly why it's called Heel for Heel?
Go for it.
Have you got time?
Absolutely.
It's called Heel for Heel because there's a very famous Scottish song and poem called Mari's Wedding, which is also a very popular Scottish dance. And it goes, step we gaily, on we go, heel for heel and toe for toe, arm in arm and row on row, all for Mari's wedding. So Heel for Heel comes from that. So I thought I'd include it in the title. So it's Heel for Heel, the story of Scottish dance.
Yeah, I know that song, actually. I'm like, I've heard that one before.
It's a good tune.
Yeah, absolutely. Was not expecting you to burst into song live on radio, but I'm so glad that you did. Absolutely made my day. We've been talking to Cindy Gray, and as she just said there, just sang there, her book is called Heel for Heel, and you can find it on www.luath.co.uk. Cindy, it's been an absolute joy talking to you. Have a lovely evening.
And you. Thank you.